Antoni Gaudí was one of the most important architects of modernity. He was so innovative in his structural design as well as in his way of conceiving buildings, using techniques that no other architect had ever before used, and making buildings that resemble the characteristics of nature. Gaudí designed many private and public constructions, most of which are located in the city of Barcelona in Spain. But his biggest work, and probably the most important, was the Expiatory Temple of the Sagrada Familia. He worked for more than 40 years in the project, which was commissioned when he was 31 years old, and he would work on it until his death in 1926. The Sagrada Familia is still under construction, but here you can see what the completed temple will look like, just as Gaudí intended it. The architect joined the project in 1883. At the time, the only work that had been started was in the columns in the crypt. Gaudí started out with a plan for a Gothic revival church, although he gradually incorporated his own innovative building solutions. At a glance, we can see that the building has a pyramidal structure. With this shape, the architect hoped to suggest the connection between the human and the divine. 3 of the elevations have towers, while the 4th presents a semicircular shape. This is the apse. Therefore, the temple has 3 facades, each dedicated to a key moment in the life of Jesus Christ: his birth, his death, and his eternal life. The exterior of the building is an authentic Bible of stone. The Sagrada Familia is inspired by the Gospels, and it aims to convey the spirit of the Christian faith to people from all over the world. When completed, there will be a total of 18 towers that will create an impressive sensation of verticality. 9 of them have already been completed, 4 in the east facade and 4 in the west facade, as well as 1 at the top of the apse. The central tower will be the tallest of them all, and it will be dedicated to Jesus Christ. 4 towers will surround it, honoring the 4 evangelists. The tower on top of the apse is the second tallest, and it is dedicated to Virgin Mary. The remaining 12 towers will be dedicated to the 12 apostles, 4 in each of the 3 facades. This is a Nativity Façade, dedicated to the birth of Jesus and his early life. With this exuberant representation of nature, Gaudí wanted to express the joy of creation at the advent of the Son of God. If you look closely, you will see that the façade is divided into 3 triangular portals, each of which is dedicated to a member of the Holy Family, or Sagrada Familia. The one on the left, known as the Portal of Hope, is dedicated to Saint Joseph. On the right we have the Portal of Faith, dedicated to Virgin Mary. And in the middle is the Portal of Charity, dedicated to Jesus Christ. If you look up, at the top of the structure you will see a cypress tree. This is a tree of life, a symbol of hospitality and eternity. The white doves on its branches represent the souls that have attained salvation. You can see how the towers have many holes. Their main purpose is to project the sound of the bells inside. Gaudí envisioned the Sagrada Familia as if it were a musical instrument, a huge organ whose music would be heard throughout the city. On top of the tower, the pinnacles are covered with colorful mosaics, using a technique invented by Gaudí called trencadís. You can see this technique in most of Gaudí's buildings. The pinnacles depict the attributes of a bishop: a mitre with a cross, a crow's ear, and a ring. The construction surrounding the basilica is the cloister, which serves as a space that communicates the facades, the sacristies, and the chapels. This is the only facade that the architect saw completed before dying. Knowing that it would be impossible for him to finish the project, he wanted this facade to serve as a guide for those who would continue the work after his demise. If we get closer, we can see all the details and sculptures of the facade. Right on top of the column, we find the birth of Jesus, the main theme from which the facade takes its name. The group reproduces the image of the traditional nativity scene: Jesus, Mary, and Joseph with an ox and a donkey. To the right, we see the shepherds who have come to adore the child. On the opposite side, the 3 magi are shown bearing gifts. And above the nativity scene, surrounded by musical angels, is the star that guided them on their journey from the Far East. At the bottom of the left portal, there's Mary riding a donkey with Jesus in her arms, and Joseph standing by her side. This image represents the Holy Family's flight into Egypt. In the opposite side of the right portal, we find an image of Jesus as he works in his father's workshop. Gaudí worked with real models, people from the neighborhood, and even members of his own team to achieve a great realism in these figures. He used plaster molds to create his stone statues. Right in the central portal, there are two turtles supporting the portal columns. The one on the left, which is the side closest to the sea, has fins, and the one on the right, closer to the mountains, is a land turtle, so it has legs instead. In Gaudí's original project, this facade had to be polychrome, the archivolts of the three porticos in rich colors. All the statues would have been painted, human and animal figures, as well as the vegetation. However, up until now, this decoration has not been carried out, for the only color that you see is on the cypress tree. The doors are the creation of a Japanese sculptor who has been working on the temple for over 40 years. The artist also created some of the sculptures that adorn this facade. To make the doors blend in with their surroundings, he filled them with many different species of plants and insects. It is now time to explore the interior of the temple. Only walking through the doors is an amazing experience, for you are struck with all sorts of sensations and a beautiful play of space, light, and color. Something very interesting about this church is that it has no chapels in the aisles as most churches of this size do, and there's also very few statues and images in the interior. That's because the protagonist here is the space itself. The images and sculptural representations are located on the outside of the temple, and they tell the story of the life of Jesus. The architect designed this interior as if it were a huge forest. Nature is an essential influence in the work of Gaudí. So much so that he came to consider it his true master. That's why all of his buildings are so colorful, and they have all these organic shapes, as there are no straight lines in nature. Notice that the columns look like trees, and above they spread out like branches reaching up to the ceiling. This structure is not merely aesthetic, for the branches are actually supporting the vaulted ceiling. This solution allows the building to reach a great height without the need for the exterior reinforcements characteristic of medieval cathedrals. The combination of aesthetics and efficiency is a defining element of Gaudí's structures. The basilica could be described as a temple of light. The light pours abundantly through the large windows and the skylights set into the vaults. When you look up, you can see that the branches blend into the vaults, and it seems as though the vaults are the treetops, and you can even see glimpses of the sky through the leaves. Notice the different colors of the stained glass windows. Those in the Nativity Façade, that is the east facade, feature shades of blue and cooler tones in keeping with the morning light. In contrast, the west-facing windows on the other side are warmer, with the red and orange tones of a sunset. These stained glass windows form part of the Passion Façade. The stained glass windows are work of artist Joan Vilagrau, who followed the guidelines established by Gaudí, and on their surface are written the names of saints and important shrines from all over the world. The tallest and thickest columns in the temple are the 4 columns in the crossing. They are made of porphyry, an extremely hard stone. When the temple is finished, these columns will support the Tower of Jesus Christ with a height of 172 meters. Gaudí wanted the tallest tower to be slightly lower than the nearby mountain of Montjuic. He is quoted as saying that the work of man should never surpass the work of God. On the upper section of the columns, there are notes with symbols. Each column is dedicated to one of the 4 evangelists. The lion is a symbol for Mark, the angel is for Matthew, the bull is a symbol for Luke, and the eagle is for John. They get their symbols because of the way their gospel starts. As in a real forest, here we find a variety of tree species. Notice the subtle differences in color, thickness, and texture of the many columns. They are made of various materials depending on the weight they must support. As I mentioned, the 4 red columns in the crossing are made of porphyry, and will eventually hold up the tallest and heaviest tower. The dark gray columns are made of basalt, while the light gray columns are granite, and the columns in the aisles are made of sandstone. Inside the temple, we find further references to the Holy Family. Just below the crossing on the floor is a mosaic with the initials of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. Above the door in the Nativity Façade, there's a sculpture dedicated to Saint Joseph. And on the opposite side, above the door of the Passion Façade, is a statue of Virgin Mary. And in the center, above the altar, is the image of the crucified Christ. Above the figure is a large suspended baldachin, inspired by the one Gaudí designed for the Cathedral of Majorca. It is decorated with wheat and grapes, symbolizing the bread and wine of the Eucharist. 50 lamps illuminate the space in allusion to Pentecost, which commemorates the descent of the Holy Spirit upon the apostles 50 days after Christ's resurrection. Over this baldachin there's a golden triangle below the apse vault, which represents God, the Creator. It is set in a skylight shaped like 2 hyperboloids, designed to catch sunlight on one side and disseminate it in the other. You can see several examples of this shape along the ceiling. If we look at the ground plan, you can see that the temple has a Latin cross plan, as usual in Gothic cathedrals. The transept runs from the Nativity Façade to the Passion Façade, and it's 60 meters long. The nave extends from the Glory Façade to the apse, and it is 90 meters long. As I said before, the cloister surrounds the entire basilica. This makes it possible to hold processions inside without having to exit the building or cross the nave and aisles. This was a problem in Gothic cathedrals. In addition, with this solution, the space of the church can occupy most of the block on which it stands. The basilica has a central nave and 2 aisles on either side, and there's a proportional relationship between them. The distance between each column in the aisles is 7.5 meters. If we double this number, we get the width of the nave, 15 meters. And if we double this number again, the result is the height of the aisles, 30 meters. The central nave rises to a height of 45 meters, which is another multiple of 7.5. The galleries on top of the aisles are reserved for the choir. You can see dark dots scattered across the railings representing musical notes in the scores of liturgical hymns. This is the interior of the Glory Façade, which celebrates the eternal life brought by the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Once the building is completed, this will be the main entrance to the basilica. It was Gaudí's wish that the entrance to be located on the side of the temple that faces the sea. These are the main doors of the temple made of bronze. They are the work of sculptor Josep Maria Subirachs. In the center, the Lord's Prayer has been written in Catalan, and all around it, the following phrase has been translated into 50 different languages. Give us this day our daily bread. With this message, the Sagrada Familia welcomes all its visitors, no matter where they come from. Over the doors, we see a warrior-like figure. This sculpture is a representation of Saint George, the patron saint of Catalonia. To the right of the main entrance, there's a plaque that commemorates the consecration of the basilica by Pope Benedict XVI in 2010. The Glory Façade is in a fairly early stage of construction. There is only the naked skeleton of the columns, arriving at a height of about 10 meters. As you can see, the main doors of the basilica are in a much higher plane than the street level. This is a challenge because there is very little space between the entrance and the sidewalk. To be able to give an adequate entrance to the temple, Gaudí designed a flight of steps over Majorca Street in such a way that all the traffic will have to pass underneath, and the stairs should reach the opposite block. Just like the other 3 facades, this one will have 4 bell towers. The baptistry and the chapel of the sacrament will be on each side of the facade, parallel to the sacristies and the back of the temple. The most spectacular element of the assembly will be some constructions shaped as clouds that will be located on 16 large hyperboloid-shaped lanterns with a cone on the top. The lower 7 will represent the days of the creation, and the upper 9, the angelic hierarchies. These clouds will have enormous inscriptions of the creed in Latin.
Credo in unum Deum Patrem omnipotentem factorem celi et terrae.
These clouds will surround an image of God. This is the apse of the basilica. There are 7 chapels along the corridor. Towards the altar, at floor level, there are several windows. Down there is the crypt, the oldest part of the temple. Thanks to these openings, Gaudí managed to make the natural light of the basilica reach the underground. The crypt of the Sagrada Familia contains the tomb of the temple's creator, Antoni Gaudí. When Gaudí died after being hit by a tram, thousands of people escorted his coffin here from the Barcelona cathedral. Gaudí worked on the basilica for 43 years, focusing exclusively on this project for the final 12 years of his life, and so he wished to be buried here. This crypt and the Nativity Façade are the only parts of the temple that the architect lived to see completed. In the doors of the Passion Façade, made by the same artist as the main doors, you can see texts from the Gospels that narrate the Passion of the Christ. This is the most dramatic façade of the Sagrada Familia, the one that represents the Passion of Jesus Christ. On the far left, we see a group of sculptures that represent the Last Supper. Right next to it, there's a figure of a dog lying down. The dog is a symbol of loyalty, which is shattered by betrayal, which is represented to the right by the figure of Judas kissing Jesus. If we continue, we find between the 2 doors the scourging of Christ. Further to the right, we come across Saint Peter, grieving after denying his master 3 times. And further, there's Pontius Pilate meditating on what to do with Jesus, seen at his side wearing the crown of thorns and flanked by 2 Roman soldiers. If you look to the left, nearly in the middle of the facade, there's Jesus carrying a cross as he walks up the Calvary. All the way to the left, just above the image of Longinus, the soldier that pierced the side of Jesus, we can see 3 seated figures. These are the soldiers playing dice for Jesus' clothes. And if we turn again to the right in the center of the facade, we find the image of Jesus crucified. On top of the bridge that links the 2 central towers, a golden figure stands out. It represents Jesus in heaven after the resurrection. So as inspiring as it is, this facade also contains a message of hope. All the figures in this facade were made by Josep Maria Subirachs. The late artist worked on the temple for nearly 20 years and enriched it with his personal style. However, he was always keenly aware of his role in carrying on the work of Gaudí, and he strove to honor the architect in various sculptures. The Roman soldiers, for example, are not wearing typical Roman helmets, but helmets inspired by the chimneys at La Pedrera, another building that Gaudí built in the city of Barcelona. In this same group on the left, we find an even more obvious reference. The sculpture gave one of the evangelists the face of the architect himself. Also, there's a square to the left of the sculpture of Judas' kiss. It's a magic square. If you add up any of the lines in any direction, the sum is always 33, Jesus' age at the time of his death. Gaudí drew what he wanted this facade to look like. He wanted to reflect Christ's passion and capture his pain. Look at the enormous leaning columns that frame the entrance. They look like tensed muscles, and the small columns above like ribs. In the words of the architect himself, this facade should be hard, bare, as if made of bones. Remember the Nativity Façade? It's a great contrast between the exuberance of it and the austerity of the Passion Façade. Next to the cloister is the sacristy, which you can identify by the shape of its dome and its triangular windows. This is where priests prepare and dress for Mass, and where the objects used during liturgical ceremonies are kept. On the pinnacles, you can see fruit baskets made of ceramic and pieces of glass. The freestanding brick building to the right houses the Sagrada Familia schools. Gaudí designed it for the sons and daughters of the temple workers. Its form drew praise from prominent architects of the 20th century such as Le Corbusier. Gaudí devoted much of his life to the construction of this masterpiece. In his final months, he even lived in it. However, he knew quite well that he would not live to see the temple completed. This explains why he left behind so many models and drawings, so that those who would continue his work would have some instructions to guide them. Since Gaudí's death, many people have invested their time, effort, and talent in the project. The Sagrada Familia is one man's dream, but it's also very much a collective effort. You can see in this model the finished parts of the church in white. The Sagrada Familia has been in construction for over 140 years, and for a while it was intended to be finished in 2026, just 100 years after the death of Gaudí. However, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, work had to be suspended for over a year, and now that date seems unlikely.
Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you learned something. Please leave a like in this video, subscribe to my channel, and if you like to support me on Patreon, I will appreciate it so much. Thank you so much, and I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.